On how many occasions have you been fooled by maps? Let's say you wanted to reach a place and you look for that location on your Google map, but instead of taking a certain lane, you went into a different lane and got stuck, and then just couldn't get out of that area, and had a lot of trouble in reaching the actual place. Well, I want to narrate a story of the year 1661, where people not just got stuck or got lost in a different lane, but they got lost in a different continent just because of an incorrect map. And this story is of the year 1661, when King Charles II from the British Empire married the Catherine of Braganza from the Portuguese Empire. And the story, as it is famously known, during the marriage, as part of the marriage, the British Empire was awarded a dowry from the Catherine of Braganza from the Portuguese Empire, and that dowry was the city of Bombay. And when that was given as a gift, as a dowry to the king, the maps of the territory was handed over to the British Empire. When the British Empire got to look into the map, they could not really locate where Bombay was. And instead of assuming that Bombay would be somewhere in the Southeast Asia, they assumed that Bombay is somewhere near Brazil. And eventually they lost the map, and they really did not pay any heed to go find and locate this place. But eventually, after 3 years, they located the place, and they had a lot of trouble in reclaiming the port of Bombay from the Portuguese Empire. Now, we might laugh at this historical story and wonder, how could someone miscalculate the entire map or miscalculate the entire region? Well, in those years, maps were not accurate. It was not as precise as we have it right now with Google Maps, all the technologies, all the artificial intelligence. But at those times, maps were just rough sketches of areas and lands. The same problems can also be seen in businesses and corporations when maps are not accurate, and therefore it kind of misleads leaders and employees of the organization into a different journey, into a different path to gain success. And these maps in organizations are process maps, standard operating procedures, various kind of guidelines, Gantt charts that should be in place for leaders, for project managers, for heads of departments, for new employees who join the organization to look into and refer and understand what is happening within an organization. How do we achieve a certain vision? How do we get to objectives? How do we lay down these strategies, and how do we follow these strategies? Because in an organization, people come and people go. And if there is something which has been successful, it should be recorded, it should be maintained, so that the people who come later on, the new joinees, the new entrants in the company, they need not go through the entire learning cycle to understand what is happening. They can just refer to these documents, these so-called process maps, these so-called standard operating procedures, and they can get going with their job. It is not only important to record these maps and standard operating procedures, but it is equally important to update these documents from time to time. What I often see is, in handling various projects, is that I am handed over a standard operating procedure of a process, and people say that we need to map the as-is process, we need to automate these processes and create systems around it. But when we get to digging these maps and start looking into these documents, what we find are these process maps are outdated. The processes don't run in this fashion in reality, and the problem is that the teams haven't updated. The maps and guidelines have been created as a document, and they just remain as a piece of antique lying into some folders of the leaders. It's not updated, it's not been reviewed, and therefore it becomes a challenge for people later on to come in, understand the process, or even suggest any changes. So if you are a person who deals with a lot of documents in an organization, please ensure that you also review these documents from time to time, see what the ground reality is, how things operate on the ground, and are these updated into those documents. Have you created versions of these documents with every change that comes in? If you don't do this, then you are using outdated maps, and like the British Empire, instead of landing in Bombay, you would end up being in Brazil.